Thanks everyone for being here. I'm having a bit of a busy day, so I'm in my car doing the meeting with my phone. Welcome to the Ending Mass Incarceration and the Death Penalty Working Group meeting, the monthly meeting in Black History Month today, February 3rd, 2025. And we're going to start with our check-in so that all of the members of WILF who are present will check in. So I'm Teresa Elamine. Robin, we'll get to you, please. I'm Teresa Elamine, and I'm the Advancing Human Rights Committee Chair and organizer for the Fannie Lou Hamer branch in Columbus, Georgia. And the check-in today is how's your day going? And I'm having a great day. I stopped by Panera Bread, and with my coupons, I got a pick 2 salad sandwich and a large hazelnut coffee for $6. So that's my check-in. So let's call on Robin. She was the first person to join outside of me and George. 1 minute, Robin, 1 minute.
Okay, I emailed you and George earlier to ask to be the vibe watcher on this meeting, or the timekeeper. Vibe watcher would be better. No, any problem?
There's something wrong with Robin's internet.
That's not the
We can't understand Robin. There's something wrong with her internet. George, so would you mute Robin and we could go on until her internet clears?
I heard Robin just fine.
Yeah, I did too.
I couldn't hear. What was she saying?
Oh, maybe it's because you're in your car.
What was she saying?
I sent an email earlier asking to be the vibe watchers for this meeting.
We don't have vibe watchers at these meetings.
How can you, who are you to make the decision?
I am the chair of the committee. George, would you please mute Robin?
Okay.
And Jean Hopkins. Could you please introduce yourself, Jean Hopkins?
Yes, I'm here in Vermont also, and this is
Jean Hopkins, introduce yourself.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. This is so timely for me because we had a professor who lives in co-housing here. Professor.
Jean, excuse me. Jean, this is a check-in. You're supposed to say your name, your branch, and one good thing. That's all.
Oh, okay. This is just branch is Burlington, Vermont. And this is just a good follow-up to a program that I was at yesterday.
Great. So Lucy Murphy, could you introduce yourself?
Yes, Lucy Murphy, DC, Maryland, and Virginia branch of WILF.
Okay. Now, George, if you could help me out, because I'm on my phone, could you call on people? Oh, Lydia Diamond is here. That's great.
Sure. Lydia, do you want to go?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, your name, your branch, and one good thing in less than a minute.
Good afternoon. My name is Lydia Diamond. I live in South Burlington, Vermont. And thank you. It was good today.
Good. Well, Gloria Macmillan, please introduce yourself. Gloria is muted. So let's go to Philip Cole. Please introduce yourself. We have 2 speakers today, so we don't have a lot of time. So Philip Cole, please introduce yourself.
I'm Philip Cole of the San Francisco branch.
Great. Joan Goddard, please introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. Sorry to be a little bit late. I'm Joan Goddard from the San Jose, California branch of WILF, and glad to be here. Thank you.
Great. So, George, if you could introduce yourself, please.
Sure, I'm George Friday in Shelby, North Carolina, the Southern Piedmont branch. I'm also the program chair.
Thank you.
I can
Gloria,
talk.
please
Yeah.
introduce yourself.
I'm sorry, it just wouldn't let me unmute. Gloria McMillan, Tucson and Chicago branches. And one good thing, I'm going out to lunch at a restaurant.
Oh, great. So Abraham and Pamela Perkins Carn are our two surprise speakers today. So they've been asked to speak for 5 minutes about the work they are doing. So Abraham, Abe Bonowitz, is a death penalty expert organizer. So he's going to speak first for 5 minutes. So George, please give him the 2-minute warning and then let him know when he has 30 seconds. And then after that, we'll do Pamela. So wonderful, Abe. Glad to see you. So glad you're feeling better.
Well, I'm still recovering, but I'm glad to be with you all. I've been dealing with some bronchitis, so if I cough a little bit, I apologize in advance. I'm grateful to be with you all, and glad to see my friend Lucy Murphy, who we've gotten to be together on a number of occasions in Washington, D.C., while protesting the death penalty. Excuse me. I've been working on this issue for over 35 years now at various levels, and I come to it as a person who initially had a gut reaction supporting the death penalty, didn't know anything about it, trying to prove the people who were against the death penalty wrong. I found out how wrong I was. And ever since then, I've been working at it on various levels as an organizer and an activist and a leader. I created an organization in the 1990s called Citizens United for Alternatives to the Death Penalty, and worked that for a few years, and then found myself as the director of New Jersey, not the field manager for New Jerseyans for Alternatives to the Death Penalty, which was the first state to legislatively abolish the death penalty, which we did in 2007, first state in the current era, which is since 1972. And after that victory, I was hired by the then existing National Coalition to Abolish the Death Penalty, which has since shut its doors. But I would, excuse me, I was the director of affiliate support for the National Coalition to Abolish the Death Penalty while we abolished the death penalty in New Mexico, Connecticut, Illinois, Maryland. And shortly after the Maryland victory, that job ended, and I became a consultant and have worked with a number of states around the country. In 2017, when Donald Trump was being inaugurated, a bunch of us were just being let out of jail, having been arrested at the U.S. Supreme Court for protesting the death penalty. And we looked around and really didn't see an organization that was ready to support visual, vocal protest against executions. So we created the group I run now, which is called Death Penalty Action. I'll put a link to it in the chat, our webpage. It's pretty easy to remember, deathpenaltyaction.org. And we led the protests against all of the Trump executions that occurred in 2020 and 2021. We created the Terre Haute Death Penalty Resistance Network with folks in Terre Haute, Indiana. That's where the federal prison is, where they carried out those executions. At the end of that, we created a coalition of nearly 500 organizations that supported the federal Death Penalty Prohibition Act that Ayanna Pressley sponsored. I see the time, thank you. And then that bill didn't go very far, of course, because Congress wasn't ready to pass such or even discuss such legislation. But we did build.
I'm listening. I'm on the Zoom call, but I'm on my laptop. So
Here.
Sorry. And we got over 100 co-sponsors of that legislation in the first session with Ayanna Pressley. And then, of course, in the second Congress under the Biden administration, we didn't get much further than that. And then we transitioned to lead a coalition of more than 400 organizations that worked to get President Biden to commute. We wanted them to commute all of the federal and the military death sentences. Unfortunately, we fell a little bit short of that, but it did commute 37 of the 40 federal death sentences. You left 3 people on the federal death row and 4 more on the military death row. And meanwhile, we also help state organizations that are working to pass death penalty restriction or repeal legislation, as is happening in a number of states right now or has happened. And also we help lead protests and clemency campaigns regarding every person that is scheduled for execution. We have a person scheduled for execution in 2 days in Texas, and in 3 days in Alabama. And on the 13th of this month, which is a week from Thursday, there's 2 executions just an hour apart in Florida and in Texas. And
30 seconds.
We do. So we basically provide tools like what you're seeing: signs, T-shirts, banners, buttons, petitions on the webpage. We host a live virtual vigil and also other educational programming about the issue. Where, like last night, for example, you would have met friends and family of the 4 people that are scheduled to be executed this month as we talked about the issues in their cases. So there you are. That's the basics of it. deathpenaltyaction.org. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Abe. We have an agenda that includes another speaker, and we will have time for discussion. So Pamela, my good friend Pamela, yes, if you could talk about ending mass incarceration in Georgia for juveniles, because juveniles are a part of the whole mass incarceration. Pamela, please introduce yourself, your organization, and your role, and tell us what's up with EMI in Georgia.
Okay, thank you so much, Teresa, and thank you everyone for having us. As Teresa said, my name is Pamela Perkins-Carn, and I am a co-convener of End Mass Incarceration Georgia Network, and we are an association of organizations, individuals, grassroots organizations, faith communities who came together to be a collective to affect positive change in areas of youth and criminal justice. And so our vision is a vision of restorative justice, and that's what we advocate for. We advocate for those who are affected by crime and incarceration, inclusive of the whole. That means, how do we restore the person or the family of that person who has experienced the harm? How do we restore the person who has perhaps caused the harm or committed the offense? And how do we restore the community that's been impacted by those downstream effects? So, but also, how do we get in front of this, especially when we're talking about our children and youth? How do we get in front of this? How do we reduce their exposure to becoming justice involved? And so what we believe is that in order to break the cycle of generational justice involvement, whether it's criminal or youth justice involvement, we must be intentional and we must make collective investments, as you all are doing, in our, in our communities, in our schools, in our children, and our adults, to ensure that everyone has that opportunity. Everyone has an opportunity for better outcomes, and for our society at large to have better outcomes. We are also part of the Justice Reform Partnership, and we have a day at the Capitol coming up on February 25th. And we invite everyone to come down. I'll also place that link in the chat. When it comes to youth justice reform, there's so much. We are at this point, we're just trying to prevent rollbacks, because we made a lot of progress with our juvenile code rewrite back in 2014. However, a lot of the policies that were outlined in that now law still need some work. They still need funding. For example, the Child in Need of Services piece still needs funding, because that is the part where we're talking about we intervene with prevention, intervention, creating plans and support systems for children and families so that they're not funneled out of the school system and into the juvenile justice system. So that's that piece. And so we've been struggling with getting funding from our government, state government, for implementing CHINs statewide in a uniform manner. And that means with equity and with supports in every jurisdiction. So if you're not in a Fulton County, maybe if you're in a, I don't know, a Toombs County, you're certainly not going to get the same types of resources that you would in a Fulton County. And so that's our challenge now, is to get our jurisdictions funded for our students, for our children, and keep them out of this preschool to prison pipeline, essentially. There's also, based for this meeting, if you don't already know, there is Georgians for Alternatives to the Death Penalty Day at the Capitol, February 12th. It's going to be hosted at Trinity United Methodist Church. And the piece of legislation that just dropped, that was just filed by Representative Werkheiser, got somebody else in my mind. Werkheiser is House Bill 123. And so I'll also put a link to that in the chat as well. And it's actually focusing on preventing the execution of persons with intellectual disabilities. And as you know, Georgia has the unique position of requiring beyond reasonable doubt, unlike any other state, in order to prove that, so that a person with intellectual disabilities does not receive the death penalty. So this is the piece of legislation that's on the docket right now. And so please, if you can, come out February 12th. Come to Trinity United Methodist Church. Of course, we'll be going over to the Capitol. Georgians for Alternatives to the Death Penalty. It's the sponsor of this day, but so many organizations are coming and faith communities are coming as well. So I will put that link in the chat so that you can RSVP today. And Teresa, turn it back over to you.
Pamela, I'm the only person here from Georgia. And I'm working with Kathy Harmon on that event. And so I will go first. What we're going to do now, because this is a national meeting, Pamela. So if you could just mute yourself while you listen to the different branches speak. I'll speak for the Fannie Lou Hamer branch, which is based in Columbus, Georgia, across the South Georgia area. And I'll just mention a couple of things. The thing you mentioned about HB 123 is very important.
Am I the only one who lost sound?
No.
Well, George, what went wrong?
We lost your sound for about 20 seconds.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll finish up. We had asked people to finish up in 5 minutes, but I'm going to finish up in less than 3 minutes. And if others could do the same, we'll have more space for questions of our guest speakers. But the other important thing that's happening this month in February, we got February 12th for the death penalty, but we got February 26th, which Walisha Wilson of the Southern Center for Human Rights is doing a similar project, and we'll be meeting up at the Central Presbyterian Church for Lobby Day to end prison slave labor in the state of Georgia. So that's my report from the Fannie Lou Hamer branch. And if we could hear from the Burlington branch, you have up to 5 minutes. So George, if Robin and Lydia want to share that 5 minutes, could you please keep time for them? Because now is the time for the Burlington branch. And after that, we'll do the other branches. Go ahead, George. Keep time.
I will. All right, who's going to start, Robin or Lydia?
Well, Lydia is here. I don't know if Robin is still online.
I
And
don't see her anywhere.
I put some
I'm
comments.
here.
Hi, Jean.
Hi.
I put some comments into the chat because I feel like if we got a volunteer, what's the harm in a Bob Watcher? I've never experienced.
That's not the topic now, Lydia. We're talking about
I'm aware.
prison
I'm
reform.
aware.
Okay.
I want to share that last month for our monthly WILK meeting, we had Free Her Vermont do a presentation on the incarceration, past and present, and what's upcoming. What's upcoming on February 8th, we will be protesting. We having a pots and pans protest at CCRF, the Chittenden County Regional Facility in South Burlington, Vermont. And that is my report. Thank you. Ooh!
All right.
Thank you.
That was less than a minute.
Wait a minute, George. Jean, since you're in the same branch, do you have anything you would like to add?
Just that I attended a lecture for a professor at UVM University, and she was explaining how the prisons are just, especially the private prisons, are just returning us to slave labor. It's not good.
Oh, yeah, that's important. We should discuss it more during the discussion. So, George, could you go next to say what's happening?
Wait, this Lydia, I have one more thing to add.
Okay.
On January 23rd of this year, WILK was a part of the documentary showing at UVM called Abolition and Revolution. And it was phenomenal. I'm working on finding a way so that everybody can see it. That's how powerful it is. As well as on January 20th of 2025, my TV show called Tea Talk. The question was, what the fuck is wrong with America? And Robin Lloyd was my guest. She was the only one who showed up to answer that question and discuss it. So we were very busy in January. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lydia. Well, let's go to Lucy of the DMV branch, DC, Maryland, Virginia, where they have no death penalty. So, Lucy, if you could speak in 3 minutes or less, we would appreciate it. Thank you.
Certainly. I sent my remarks to everybody by email, but I'm happy to read them. The DC capital punishment law was nullified by the Supreme Court decision in Furman versus Georgia in 1972 and formally repealed by the DC Council in 1981. In the 1992 Congress ordered referendum, district residents voted against reinstating the death penalty. The district is a liberal stronghold, which usually gives at least 85% of its votes to the Democratic candidate in presidential elections. In 1997, Mayor Marion Barry proposed a bill allowing capital punishment for the murder of public safety employees, which was rejected by the council's Judiciary Committee. Barry came out of SNCC and should have known better, but the council blocked his attempt to reinstate the death penalty. In addition to things I found in Wikipedia, the internet also revealed that Maryland's legislature passed a death penalty repeal bill in March 2013. The bill was signed by Governor Martin O'Malley on May 2nd, 2013. Virginia is the first Southern state to abolish capital punishment. On March 24th, 2021, Governor Ralph Northam signed legislation to end the death penalty in Virginia and reduce the sentences of the Commonwealth's 2 death row prisoners to life without parole. That is all I have to say.
Wonderful report. Thank you. We will go to San Francisco and then San Jose branches after that. So, Philip Cole, do you have a report from the San Francisco area, since California still has a death penalty and has serious mass incarceration?
Well, actually, California does not have a death penalty.
Really?
They have dismantled death row and turned it into a rehabilitation center. And also, it's Black History Month, and the words "lift every voice" is resonating in my head. So I want to thank Lydia for lifting her voice,
Well, that
and
is great news.
I appreciate her presence. Thank you, Lydia.
Oh, great. Thank you, Philip. So, Joan Goddard, could we hear from you? Anything you want to add to what Philip said? Because I didn't realize California no longer has the death penalty.
Thank you for good news, Philip. You're welcome.
Yes. Ditto.
Joan, okay.
Yeah. Okay. I don't have anything to add. Thank you very much. Thanks, Philip.
Well, thank you. Well, we'll go to Southern Piedmont, which is in the Charlotte area, George Friday, and then we'll do Tucson after George, and then we'll be opening up for discussion. George,
the North Carolina's alternatives to the death penalty don't have a policy that is currently before our legislature here in North Carolina. I spoke to the folks there. The director is on vacation, but I spoke with one of the organizers, and he said,
George, are you finished?
No. She's just started.
I'm almost, I spoke with the organizer there, and I think he's spoken at one of our past meetings of this group. And he mentioned that they're working on, the North Carolinians for alternatives to the death penalty, are working on coalitions and collaborating to have a federal policy introduced, hopefully this year, but he said they've been working on that for several years. That's it.
Well, go ahead, Gloria, for Tucson.
Okay, now my mute was not coming off. Anyway, HCR 2001 was introduced by Democratic State Representative Patty Contreras, and this measure would allow voters to decide on amending the Arizona Constitution to end the death penalty. And it's in the chat, and it will appear in the 2026 ballot. And she represents I wish she did, Phoenix, Watuki, South Tempe, and West Chandler. So this was put in December, and it will come on our ballot in 2026, hopefully to get rid of the death penalty. I'm done.
Thank you, Gloria. I know our speakers. Thank you, Gloria. I know our speakers don't have much time. So anybody have any questions for Abraham or Pamela? George, if you could recognize people raising their hands or asking questions.
Okay. My hand's up, and my question is for Abe. I got the impression in talking to staff person today that it's better on the road to abolition, full abolition. It's better if the state has made some policy clear before going for federal. Do you recommend that strategy? Because North Carolina, doesn't have a death penalty. There's a death row. There are 2 people on death row, but we haven't put anybody to death since the 80s. So,
North Carolina?
yeah.
Well, I'm afraid you're a little bit mistaken there. North Carolina has 130 some people on death row. They just had your governor just commuted 15 death sentences. So you've got somewhere around 120 people left, I think. Your last execution was about, I have to look up, at least a decade, maybe 15 years ago or so. But North Carolina's had plenty of recent executions, and that's over 100 people on death row right now. And the question becomes what your next governor is going to do in terms of allowing executions to resume in North Carolina. I mean, one thing we have to be aware of is just last year, we had 3 states that hadn't executed in more than a decade resumed executions. That would be Utah and Indiana and South Carolina. And South Carolina is now on a tear. They just had their 3rd execution since September, this past Friday night. All of them black men, 2 of them with strong innocence claims that were just roundly ignored. But as far as your other part of the question, so I do encourage you to check out the North Carolinian Coalition for Alternatives to the Death Penalty, and their webpage has a lot more information there. Excuse me. But the only way that the federal government can abolish the death penalty for all of us is if the United States Supreme Court strikes down all death penalty laws, which it did in 1972, but it didn't say the death penalty was unconstitutional. It simply said that it had to be changed and fixed, which they did, and that's basically the current setup that we have now with how the states have the death penalty. So if the U.S. Supreme Court does not strike down the death penalty, which I would not expect of this current U.S. Supreme Court, then it does go to the states to abolish their own death penalty. The federal government can only address the federal death penalty and the military death penalty, but not the state death penalties. So that's why we have had a strategy in our movement to chip away state by state. We're now at a place where 24 states do not have a death penalty. 12 never did in the current era. By current era, I mean since 1972. Some had it and then got rid of it. So like I said, we have legislatively abolished the death penalty in New Jersey, New Mexico, Illinois, Connecticut, Maryland, New Hampshire, Colorado, Virginia, Washington, and Delaware now. And now we need other states to continue to do that to the extent that they can. It's a very challenging time to pass legislation in general. But some states, I mean, curiously, Ohio has bipartisan legislation in a Republican-dominated everything with a Republican governor who's refusing to carry out executions. So we're going to see how long that lasts. But ultimately, my fear truly is that we're going to see, even though we are at historically low numbers, not just of executions, but of new death sentences, not only new death sentences, but also even capital indictments. The trends on the death penalty are all downward. At the same time, we're seeing more executions happening in states that haven't done it in a while. And a lot of that came about because of states having an inability to get the drugs for lethal injections. So some states are actually shifting back to other methods or new methods, such as gas suffocation, which is what we're going to see for the 4th time in Alabama this coming Thursday, if that execution is not stopped. And I'll just finally finish this piece up to say that actually the man that's scheduled to be executed in Alabama is from Michigan and is serving life sentences in Michigan and is technically a Michigan prisoner. And Michigan was the first state to abolish the death penalty, which it did in 1847. And in 1963, passed a constitutional prohibition. So our campaign has actually been, in these last few days, to try to push Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer to demand the Michigan prisoner back from Alabama. The lawyers believe actually that if she does that, then she would likely prevail if Alabama's governor was to say no and adhere to the courts. So we're going to see what happens. We just had a program last night. You can find it on our social media and our YouTube.
Abe, I've got to get Teresa's question. I'm sorry.
Sure. So anyway, point is, I put in the chat links to each of the petitions for the next for that next execution in Alabama, and on our webpage you can find petitions for the other ones that are scheduled in the next few weeks.
Okay,
well,
Teresa?
Thank you, Abraham, for being such a trooper. I am so glad to be connected with you and looking forward to working with you over the long haul. Abraham, you're actually in Columbus, Ohio. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay.
We get around.
Well, thank you so much, Abraham. I want to ask Pamela a question. Pamela, you remember some years ago when there was major juvenile justice reform, setting up guardian ad litems and all of that. But I know that they still have not raised the age. So you're an adult at 17 in Georgia. What's the potential of getting the raise the age bill passed? And are they still sentencing youth to life?
Yeah, the raise the age, thank you. Yes, the raise the age was not included in the initial reforms of the juvenile code. And so that was one of the things that the council said, our legislators said was just a non-starter. They wouldn't even consider it. And so since then, so we're going on this 2025, so 11 years now, still trying to get raised the age, which is to include our 17-year-olds, like every other state except for 3 states. Georgia is one of the 3, like every other state has done, to include the 17-year-olds in the juvenile court jurisdiction and treat them as youth rather than as adults. To start within the juvenile court system. So we have run into several blockades with race to age, everything from not being heard, in committee to now adding gang language to the bills in order to just kind of pack them with other conditions. So, Georgia has this I don't know, fetish with thinking every child is in a gang. I'm not sure why that is, but that's the situation where we are right now. The sponsor who has been a Republican and a chair of the Juvenile Justice Committee in the House has not weighed in yet. So we're still in a wait and see mode. She has been the sponsor. She has done a lot of compromises. And so to the point where we were like, that's not a bill that we wanted passed anyway. So we're still wait and see, still advocating for it and advocating for a clean bill. Don't put all of these, other things, other conditions which can trap children into the adult system, much less the juvenile system. So that's where we are right now. We need another legislature. That's, bottom line. This is not a child-friendly legislature when it comes to restorative justice or second chances, things like that, education even. So on the other piece on the juvenile life without parole, child life without parole.
Pamela,
yes,
we've known each other for over a decade, and you've been working for the children.
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. My connection is spotty, but Pamela has been working for the children for a long time. Pamela, what was the predecessor organization when we first met? What was it called?
Oh, it's still there. I was the child advocate person for Interfaith Children's Movement, but that's still around. The organization is still there.
Yeah. Georgia's Voices for Children. We have got to stop the incarceration of our children, and those gang laws are just crazy.
And they
what
still
they're
are.
doing. Oh, it's just crazy. So thank you. Are there any other questions for our speakers? Hasn't this been a special treat today to have Pamela and Abraham put up your little clap signs on the reaction?
It's a pleasure to meet Abraham and everybody.
Any other questions, George? Help me out. I can't see.
I don't see anybody's hands up except for clapping. Yeah, there aren't other questions. In the chat, thanks to both speakers.
Thank you, George, because we have quite a few announcements. So the really thing that's high on my mind is Women in Conflict Zones, the webinar. So, George, if you could put the link in the chat so that people can register. We're asking all branches to endorse. And so far, DMV, Fannie Lou Hamer, Southern Piedmont are the branches that have endorsed Women in Conflict Zones because this is a meeting of the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom. And we do have a branch in Metro Atlanta, Pamela. You still live in Metro Atlanta. So I hope you'll join us because we're protecting children around the world from war and conflict. So, George, would you like to say a little bit more about Women in Conflict Zones, since you and I are the main organizers? And we got the International Peace Bureau, Code Pink, the Convention for Pan-Africanism and Progress, and World Beyond War to join the Southern Anti-Racism Network in creating this major event on March 19th. So we're trying to get 500 people registered by March 1 and 100 endorsing organizations. So, George, would you like to say more or see if there are any questions?
I can't think of anything to add. I put the link to this page in the chat. It says link can be found here, and you'll see here a description of the event. It'll be at noon Eastern time on the 19th. We have speakers from these countries, 10 countries.
Oh, great. So on March the 8th, we will have the Fannie Lou Hamer branch, 4th anniversary. Oh, okay.
And here so far are endorsing
So yes,
organizations.
we should name the countries, George.
Sure. We have Belarus. They're going to speak for 5 minutes about conditions there. Cameroon, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Gaza, Palestine. We have a speaker from there. Lebanon, Mozambique, Nigeria, South Korea, Sudan, and Syria will all be represented. And please endorse and get your organizations to endorse, your branch. If you're a member of WILF, we want all interested parties to be endorsers.
Organizations. So we want to get UNAC and a bunch of the Black Alliance for Peace, all of them to endorse. But I will say that the U.S. did some strikes in Somalia, and we were trying to get a speaker from Somalia, but we couldn't. We tried to get a speaker from Ukraine, but if you say anything against the war in Ukraine and you're in Ukraine, you're treated like a traitor, which is why we got the woman from Belarus. Who will mention Ukraine. So if there are no more questions about Women in Conflict Zones, please register. The quick announcement about the Fannie Lou Hamer branch. The first hour will be live streamed. So from 11 a.m. to noon, we will do a live stream. And so Jan Quarterman is asked to speak about the CSW and the global to local. So she's going to be a key speaker in the live stream hybrid event. And so the only other announcement is February 24th, when we will have the AHR umbrella meeting. And as some of you may have heard, I'll be leaving this position of AHR co-chair for sure by June 30th. But at the February 24th meeting, we will be taking nominations for chair and co-chair. So it's possible I could leave as soon as the March 24th meeting. So it's very important for people who consider themselves.
We lost Teresa, but do come to the February 23rd umbrella meeting. And if you are of a mind
George, you have it wrong, George. The umbrella meeting is February 24th. The Black Liberation Caucus meeting is Sunday, the 23rd.
Okay, you continue. We thought we lost you.
Well, you did lose me because my internet is spotty, but I don't have anything more. And we have a hard stop at 3, but we actually have 12 minutes. So, George, if you could help with any additional comments, because I don't have any other comments.
George, this is Lydia. Can I make a comment?
Yes, Lydia.
So, it's Black History Month. Yay! I am officially on the ballot for South Burlington City Councilor in South Burlington, Vermont. They have never, ever had a person of color to step up and try. But I am on the ballot and I plan to raise my voice because South Burlington has 21,000 people. And they say that only 17% is BIPOC, but we don't have representation, period. It's all wealthy white people. And poor little Black Lydia is running to get a seat on the South Burlington City Council. Pray for me. And I'll take endorsements and all that good stuff too. Thank you very much.
Oh, well, Lydia, how can individuals donate to your campaign? Is there a link you could put in the chat? Because Wilf is nonpartisan and doesn't get involved in elections, but we as individuals can support you. So how do we do that?
Well, I'll send out an email with the link and the information.
Oh, thank you so much. Well, Gloria has her hand up, George. So could we hear from Gloria Macmillan before we close out?
Yes, hi again, everyone. And we're going to have the 110th anniversary of Wilf in Chicago on March 22nd at the Chicago Women's History Center. I did put in the chat where you can get more information. It's co-sponsored by the Black Metropolitan Caucus. I forget their exact title of Chicago. So it is going to be a really good event, and we are hoping for a very BIPOC participated group. And we do have some scholarship funding, it looks like, for people that may need help. So hopefully this will turn out very well.
All right.
Well, if there's nothing more, we can close out the meeting a little early. Thank you again, Pamela, for being here. And I'll be in touch with you soon.
All right, everybody. I will send out the recording with chat and whatever attached tomorrow or later tonight. No, it'll probably be tomorrow. All right. See you next month.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for a great meeting. Thank you.